measure of how well recovered you are. For example, touching your toes. Some days you'll do that easily with no pain, no discomfort, no stretch to the hammies, and feels good. And other days, potentially after a game, and it's the hardest thing you've ever tried to do. So it can change for a footballer throughout a week, particularly in a game week. But there's also some good performance measures that you can practice and take away from today's presentation to increase your mobility. And an athlete that has better mobility is more able to get to a ground ball or overhead mark and get into awkward little positions and create more patterns on the field more quickly, as well as freely and easily, so less risk for causing harm on your body and injuries and so forth. So it's very, very important. And my favorite quote is from Bruce Lee, where was famous for saying, "Be water, my friend." And the quote that I picked out from him was, "Don't get set into one form, adapt it and build your own. Let it grow, be like water. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. Now you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes a teapot." So, yeah, I think it's a pretty profound quote to sort of talk about, not just in terms of mobility, but also mental mobility as well, to be fluid and adaptable in challenging situations, whether it be on the football field or in life in general. So this is a good go-to for me. And he was, incredible with what he could do with his body. If you haven't heard of Bruce Lee or seen his stuff, and you've got half an hour to spend on some YouTube clips, definitely worth your while. So some lifestyle things that, if you're not doing well, will reduce your mobility. So if you're in pain, so an injury, I'm sure you guys have experienced this when you've maybe sprained an ankle, your mobility, of course, is going to be affected. But also what happens when you have an injury is that you compensate, and your body's incredibly intelligent and will adapt its movement to be able to function throughout the day. So not only will your ankle be less mobile that's injured, but potentially other areas in your body part throughout your body might reduce their mobility because now they're overloading, they're compensating for that injury. So just being aware of the effect an injury can have on your function and how that's affecting the rest of the body, particularly if it is a lower limb injury. Us being on our feet all day and moving around, we can potentially affect the rest of our body. So you may want to spend more time doing some, especially if you're in the phase of letting that injury settle down and let the swelling and blood come out of the injury. You might be worthwhile mobilizing other joints throughout your body to keep things free and feeling good. Dehydration, drying out your cells will definitely affect the function for your muscles to lengthen. So it's really important to keep well hydrated. Poor nutrition, particularly takeaway foods where we don't know how it's been prepared, and your standard junk food that will have a potential inflammatory response within the body, and that stress response can tighten up the body and get a bit of a sympathetic nervous system response, which will tighten up and restrict your range of motion and your mobility. So nutrition plays a really important part. Eating a healthy diet will allow your muscles to move freely. And this is a big one and something that obviously is hard to avoid at all times, but particularly with your work or areas that you need to do outside of football. And that's prolonged sitting. So when you're sitting, your hamstrings are shortened, your lower back is compressed, your neck might be flexed over. So working more your upper trap muscles, and your upper back muscles are on length, and the front of your shoulders are shortened. So it's tightening up muscles from the front as well as your hamstrings on the back. and your glutes aren't active. They're acting as cushions. So unfortunately, there's a lot of negative effects with sitting down, particularly when you're doing it for a long period of time. The human body can handle it. And if you're someone that moves quite frequently and you're training every couple of days, or you're doing some form of movement, whether it be going for a walk each day, you'll be able to handle the stress of sitting a lot better. But if you're prolonged sitting without doing a movement practice or without training and moving your body through different planes, then, and you may have experienced this, you will get things like tight lower back, tight hamstrings, and that will expose you to higher risks of injury, particularly through the hamstrings. So prolonged sitting is something definitely to try and avoid. If you can, create a standing desk, use a Swiss ball. Adding a lot of variation to your sitting is really important. And then just simply getting up and moving around for every couple of hours if it's a big uni day or work day. So just adding in some movement to help break up the effects that sitting has on the body. The 3 different type of mobility methods that I thought I'd go through today that I've used myself and used with athletes that I found the most effective will be static stretching, which I'm sure you've all experienced. That's the classic cool down football stretch where everyone sits in a circle, has a bit of a chat and stretches out the hamstrings, groins, quads, and maybe calves, and the session's done. Proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, also known as PNF stretching. Research has shown, and I've definitely found anecdotally, that this is the most effective way if you need to, if you've got a really tight muscle for whatever reason, you haven't recovered well from a session, and you want to increase your range of motion for an upcoming session, then PNF stretching is definitely my go-to. So that's really effective for getting short-term results and good preparation for maybe a sprinting session or a high load lifting session, like working up to a heavy back squat or trap bar. And you're in the off season, you want to get the load in and you want to minimize any risk, then PNF stretching is really good to add into your warm-up. And then massage and self-myofascial release. This is more dealing with the fascia of the body, which is an outside layer of our body, and that connective tissue has a huge influence on how mobile we are. And it's also amazingly interconnected throughout the body. So for instance, we have like a posterior line that works from underneath our foot all the way over to the front of our head. And when you release, maybe with a golf ball underneath your foot, and you release your plantar fascia for a good couple of minutes, you'll actually increase the range of motion of your hamstring on that side, even though you haven't done anything on your hamstring. So the body is hugely connected through fascia. It's what keeps us together. And understanding trigger points and areas that are tight can have a huge bang for buck effect on your body. And like I said, by doing a couple of minutes of hard release work through your feet, which are commonly a pretty tight and overloaded area because we walk around and run on our feet, that can actually have an effect on further up on the chain. So your hamstrings, your lower back flexibility, all the way through up towards your neck. Pain face. So if you've had a deep tissue massage, if you've done some of these mobility techniques before, and you're demanding your body to increase range of motion, we actually want to avoid what we call the pain face, where you grimace your face and you're gritting the teeth and just sort of copying the pain. What I'm suggesting is not, you want to work the tissues and definitely work them pretty hard and challenge your muscles, just like hard training when you're trying to increase your mobility. So it's not that we're avoiding going to the pain face, but what we want to do is when we feel that pain face coming on, because you found a really tight muscle and you want to try and release that tension, focus on breathing, long, slow breaths, and that will help get your body from a stress state to a relaxed state. So focusing on your breathing, and then having calming thoughts, making sure that you're not you know, when you're in this pain phase, your body is essentially under attack. It's very easy to think things like frustration, anger, any negative thoughts. We actually want to try and relax those thoughts and try and be as positive as we can and relaxed as we can, because that when the body's in that state, mentally and physically, the muscles will relax and they'll lengthen. So if you're in pain phase, recognize it, have the awareness of it, and try breathing and focusing on calming thoughts to be able to work through that sore, tight area. Static stretching, my favorite type of yoga for increasing your flexibility, which has a big part to play for mobility, is yin yoga. So if that's something you haven't played around with before, and particularly if you're someone that struggles to do static stretching from a motivation point of view, which I know I definitely struggle to find the regular motivation to stretch and do it really well with quality attention that it deserves. I find putting myself into like a yin yoga session, either online or in a class, is a good environment. We're around incredibly mobile, flexible people. So it's motivational, as well as you're more likely to challenge yourself in that environment than I found, and go through the motions by just stretching myself. So yin yoga is a really, really good method. It's also meditative as well. So it's slow paced, and it's quite easy to feel relaxed in that format. So you're less likely to feel that pain face. Really important to note, if you do yin yoga, advanced yogis will hold stretches for up to 5 minutes, but as an athlete, it's good to try and keep yourself around that 45 seconds to 60 seconds. So you're not creating too much laxity within the ligaments and tendons. So that's really important, because the demands of yoga compared to what a footballer needs are a little bit different. So you don't want to have extreme increase in your flexibility through certain muscle tissues without having the stability as well. Otherwise, you're at risk for injury. So a good rule of thumb is keep your poses for no longer than sort of 60 seconds. And you might just change sides. If they're holding a pose like a pigeon stretch for 5 minutes, you might just change legs every 60 seconds. So you're varying the load. And that way you're not creating instability in the body. Or you can just pick your favorite 5 to 10 stretches, go through 2 rounds and spend 60 seconds on each stretch. So that's sort of your own home routine that you might do. And if you have any questions or queries on what stretches you can do, I've got a routine that I can send you, so feel free to reach out. This is the what I mentioned a little bit earlier, the most effective way that I've noticed for increasing mobility for preparation for a main training session, and that's the PNF stretching. So you can do it with a partner. So like these two are demonstrating here, the person getting stretched is pushing her foot up against the person that's pressing down. So she's pressing down, so it's got a resistance to it, where you have an isometric contraction for anywhere between 5 to 10 seconds. So her hip flexors, quads, and glutes will be engaged for 5 to 10 seconds. And then she relaxes the muscles, and the partner doing the stretch will, your muscles completely come to relax, and then she would just slowly push her heel towards her bum. That way we're increasing the stretch of the hip flexor, quadriceps. And what's happening here is that you're recruiting more muscle fibers with the activation. So you're waking up that area. And then when you're relaxing, your muscles will go into a deeper relaxed state, where they're able to then increase your range of motion. So it's really, not only is it a really effective way to increase your flexibility, but because of the contraction element to it, you're more likely to hold on to that flexibility for longer when you practice this method. Where with static stretching, because there's not a strong contraction to it, there's no stimulus, it's not training per se, it's more just relaxing the tissues. The benefits that you've got from that session may reset after 30 minutes to 60 minutes after the session is done. Whereas PNF stretching, it can last for a lot longer because there's a strong isometric contraction involved with it. And you can do these PNF stretches with hamstrings, so lying on your back and pressing your calf into someone's shoulder, and you're digging your calf into their shoulder for 5 to 10 seconds, and then relax, and then they bring your leg forward into a deeper stretch. And you do anywhere between 3 to 5 sets on one side, and each time when you relax, you go through an increased stretch each time. And then the foam rolling, trigger Theraguns, trigger balls, as well as having a buddy that can give you a massage or give you a treatment, osteos, physios, and masseuses. So these are good tools that you can use to help relax that fascia that I was talking about, which has a big role to play in terms of your mobility and your quality of movement. Good rule of thumb when you're doing this, especially if you're doing it to yourself, is to apply strong pressure when you're rolling towards the heart. So if you're rolling your calves, you want to roll hard up towards your heart and then release easy on the way back down towards your ankles. And that way you're just promoting that blood flow towards your heart and help getting rid of those byproducts, toxins that can be built up from training and just general load. You're helping your body flush those out by assisting in the circulation. We want to try and avoid using lots and lots of pressure on areas where there's bones, so like over your kneecap and things like that. It's obviously common sense, but you know, there shouldn't be any sharp pain. There shouldn't be any shooting, referring pain where you're getting that neural pain where you found a trigger point and it's referring through to maybe your fingertips from your shoulder. So good rule of thumb to stay away from that if you're getting that type of response. With this stuff, for it to be effective, you essentially just want to be finding those tight muscles, those overloaded muscles, and trying to release them and relax them through some work. So there shouldn't be excruciating pain. And remember, if you're feeling that, if you're going for a deep tissue response or you're getting a deep tissue massage, and they're working through those gristly muscles, try and avoid the pain face as best you can. Don't just grit the teeth and to hold on with the pain face. Try and relax the face, ease the tension, and focus on your breath and calming thoughts. And then a big area of mobility that I think is underestimated is your general mindset towards life, and how flexible and open you are with everything that you do. Do you look at the glass half full or half empty? So having that optimistic sort of view on life tends to allow the body to be in a state of recovery. And if the body's in a state of recovery, then it's going to have less tension that it holds on to. So not just physical stress like training hard will tighten up the body, but also emotional, mental stress. So having really good coping strategies to deal with life stresses will result in your prevention of your muscles tightening up and your fascia tightening up. So can't go underestimated how important understanding your psychology is and having the awareness of things that trigger you and have an effect on you. Dealing with those things and being able to cope with those things will definitely allow your body to stay mobile and functioning well. So there's a few different areas to see how mobile your body is. We've got heart rate variability, which is a device that you put over your finger, and that will let you know whether your nervous system is in a overstressed state, or it's in a balanced state, or it might be in a really relaxed state because you've done some hard training. So it's in a really hyper recovery state. You've got range of motion things that you can do, like trying to touch your toes. And that's feedback not only for how, what areas feel tight, like she might be feeling that a stretch through her hamstrings, and normally she doesn't. So okay, that's feedback. I need to be doing a bit more work through my hamstrings. Or you might find that there's a lot of tension through your neck or your lower back. So it's feedback, these movements. So finding a routine that you do that gives you good feedback on how well recovered and mobile your body is on that given day and then putting in a practice to focus on those tighter areas to keep your body in check and healthy. Friends and families and those ones close to you, more from that mental, emotional state. So sometimes when you're going through a highly stressful time and it's overwhelming, it can be at times hard to recognize. So because you're sort of in that survival mode. So having friends and families that are close to you, that you trust and respect, and leaning on them and asking feedback on, that, or they might just openly let you know, oh mate, is everything okay? I've noticed you seem to be a little bit off lately. Is there any way I can help out? Whatever it is, and that's feedback on, oh yep, I've got to take that on. Obviously, when they mention something, there must be something I need to attend to that I'm not aware of. So having that awareness, sometimes you might not recognize it yourself, but your friends and your family can help with that. And then the Garmin watch or Apple watches now have heart rate variability in them. They've got your breathing rate. So you can see if you're shallow breathing, your breathing rate will be a lot higher, which is a sign of stress. If your breathing rate is normal compared to your normal, then that's a sign that your body's in a good state, as well as your resting heart rate. If your resting heart rate's up a little bit higher than normal, then maybe your body's recovering from a hard training session. Or if you didn't train, then that might be a sign of a lifestyle thing that's causing a stress response in your body. So the smart watches now are incredible biofeedback on how the body's recovering. Okay, and this is a summary. So finding the relaxing technique that best suits you, respecting the mental, emotional stress and the effect that has on our movement and mobility, and then feedback, what we measure, we tend to improve. So having those areas that help you improve them. I'm going to